Hello everyone, Waymokes here with Pegas Technology Solutions. Today I want to give you an overview of Content Storm. Content Storm is our newest content writer, and this tool is going to allow you to write high quality content at scale for blog posts, service pages, social media. Essentially, the way we built this tool is once you decide what your topic is going to be, and in this case we're using blog content, and we need to have a main keyword. So this is what we're going to put in first. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to then figure out what our article type is going to be. So this is what makes this tool so powerful. Is adding a bunch of modifiers and prompts dynamically based on the content in Airtable, meaning that you can change it on a fly. For an example, probably the best way I can show you this is using our page outlines. And here what we have is we have our outline. So we don't have any features in this one. And the next one that I show you is going to have features. And then we have our example. So this is providing training on what we actually want that output to actually look like. And then we have our modifiers. So this is providing instructions. So right here we have benefits and features. So the other one just pretty much eliminates this features, and it's not going to actually add it to the outline. So when we want to add new content types, all we need to do is provide an actual outline of how it should look, give it an example, and add a little bit of modifiers to make sure that it's going to follow our instructions perfectly. Now we also have page prompts, post templates. This is for all the social media stuff. We have 125 thus far. And that's going to be for the top of the funnel, middle, and for people to go through that entire buying experience. Now we also put in target audiences. In my example, I'm using small businesses. We have the voice that you're talking in, the archetype, locations. So this is important. We only added the United States into this one, but we have pretty much an entire database of the world that we can add depending on where your location is. But this allows us to write really niche content throughout the entire process. For example, we're based in Maine. Some of my content needs to be only for the people in Maine, and it needs to be optimized for those SERPs. Sometimes I'm working with local businesses, and what we need to do is we need to build a kind of a topical overview of their area and figure out where their city centers are. And that's the content that we're going to write. We're not going to actually write it for a state level. We're going to write it for, that specific town. So we need to decide how we're going to interact with Google SERPs, and we're pretty much doing this so we can use all the correct modifiers or JSON keys in data for SEO. All right, so let's actually start writing our piece of content. Now, I've already decided what my piece of content is going to be. Implementation, a step-by-step guide. So what we're going to do is we're going to start getting the SEO information for this actual piece of content. So this is what it's going to look like. We're just going to test this workflow. And what it's going to do is it's going to gather all the keywords around ERP implementation. And that's going to build us a keyword cluster for this article. And it's also going to give us our search intent, our content expectations. And then it's going to scrape the SERPs. And then it's actually going to pull those first 10 results and go through every single page. It's going to pull all the headers and essentially all the images, internal, external links, content expectations that blog post is about. And it's also going to give us key takeaways. Then it's going to compile all of that into one field in our Airtable, and then we can use that to actually generate an SEO optimized outline. So I'm going to pause this and come back when this workflow finishes. All right, so it looks like it actually generated everything for us. It finished, well, actually just finished executing the workflow. So let's jump into our Airtable and see what we got back for results. So we're going to go to our SERP overview. And this is what we got back. We have our search intent, our SEO outline based on the first 10 results of Google, and our keyword cluster. All right, so the next thing that we're going to jump to is doing the research. Now I'm not actually going to show you how all these workflows work because, we plan on monetizing this tool and eventually turning it into a SaaS product. So we can't give you guys everything. But we can give you an overview of a couple of the agents and how the SERP works and how we actually finalize the content. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to generate our outline. Now this one runs relatively quick. It takes maybe anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds. Really the longest workflows to execute are going to be our SERP analysis tool and our final content writing. All right, so this is a content that is pretty much optimized for the SERPs, and it's going to give us an introduction to ERP implementation, building your ERP implementation strategy. It's giving us talking points for everything. And then we're splitting everything up by these chevrons. And we're doing that so we can actually split this content out when we're writing it. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to do more research using Google, and we're also going to use Perplexity to also generate some AI research. So essentially we're just going to generate a bunch of background information so we can actually make this article better. And what that's going to do is it's essentially going to pull in trends around ERP implementations. Probably what it's going to do actually is going to find something a little bit more generalized for ERPs. For example, if they're using all the tools like HRM, CRMs, if people are implementing AI technology into their actual business. And it's going to do that for the SERPs and using Perplexity Search. So we have our information back. Current trends in development in ERP implementations with small businesses in the United States. So it remains to be a transformative force for small businesses. It's going to give us some insights, background information, and practical examples. And this is going to pretty much do the same exact thing. And we're covering something a little bit more new: cloud adoption, integrations, mobile accessibility, customizations, and then it's also going to give us a bunch of sources. Now, one problem with Perplexity and a lot of AI tools is this link. It's going to be 50-50 if it works, and it was not found. So it means that it either hallucinated this URL or that information has actually moved. So we have an agent in there that's actually going to go and validate every single one of these URLs and make sure they're valid. And if it's not, it's actually going to find that source on Google. And if it can't actually find it, it's actually going to eliminate that from our actual process. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do more of a topical overview for an outline. And this is going to be essentially an optimized AI outline. And it should be very similar to our SERPs, but it's also going to add new topics and new ideas that never existed on any of those pages for the SERP results. And I think that's what's going to make this so much more powerful. You're not just going to be like every other person that's either writing a piece of content that is optimized for Google search or writing an article that is only using Perplexity or something for the research. All right, so this all looks good to me. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is probably pull in some statistics. And then we're going to actually run our URLs. We need to actually swap those boxes around in our table. Now, essentially, all this is going to do is gather statistics from Perplexity, Google Search, and a few other places. That way we can have a pretty good idea of statistics so we can further enrich this article. And this is something that we actually had a team member that we used to have them do this research for a specific blog post. Now this used to take them anywhere from an hour or two to actually compile all this information. They used to go to like Gardner and a few other sources like that to actually pull apart case studies and use that when they're writing the blog article. So this pretty much just automated that entire process. ERP Next is used by 2,613 live websites, so it's pulling that with built in. So it's pulling all this information for us, and a lot of times URLs should be completely, accurate, because we're validating everything before we actually, put it in the Airtable. All right, so I believe the next step in the process is actually going to be gathering external URLs. All right, so I'm actually going to show you how one of these agents work, so you kind of get an idea of the process that we're following. So we're just going to test the workflow, and it's just running the workflow manually. So in this agent right here, we essentially have an entire step-by-step process that the agent is going to follow. And these right here is, this is the AI model. And these are tools that it's going to use to achieve the actual process. It's going to check the domain names for those external URLs. So is that URL valid? For one, and how much actual search traffic does that URL have to it? If it doesn't have much, then it's actually going to eliminate it, because we don't really want to be linking to websites that aren't winning on Google. We're going to make sure that that URL is valid. And if it's not valid, then we're going to actually go out and find that URL or similar URL on Google. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use this text tool to actually figure out what's at that page. And then we also have a tool that will actually extract the URLs so we can further go to other pages on the website to do a more in-depth analysis of the page content. All right, so what do we have for our external URLs now? All right. So it looks like everything is good. And let's just double check this URL. As you can see, fully valid. And it's going to be like that with this tool probably 90% of the time. The only time that we're actually going to really be involved in this process is the final outline. Everything else is pretty much automated. And technically, you don't need to edit at the final outline. I do it because I want to make sure that everything that's going to be written is actually true, and we want to make sure that all the URLs that we're using are fully valid. That way Google doesn't kind of laugh at us when we first publish our post and say, hey, you're linking to a source that does not exist on the internet. And they might not actually trust us, because we just pretty much published an article and, we're linking to a source that does not exist. All right, so in this agent, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the everything that we've generated thus far. We're going to pull out all the recommendations that it has for new content ideas for our SERP optimized SEO outline. It's going to give us all the content ideas that it has. And then what it's going to do is it's actually going to take those ideas and it's actually going to add them to a new outline. And then we actually run through another agent that is going to do a little bit of editing before I even look at it, to make sure all the URLs that added are valid. And it's also going to go and check some of the talking sources. So for an example, introduction to ERP Next implementation, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this. Because when we're writing the content, I actually have a node that's going to write the introduction. And we don't want to have duplicate content throughout the process. All right, so we have our talking points. We have our URL. So I've already checked that one. I know that. We have our visual type, so it's actually going to generate an image there for us. All right, so we checked that one. So we have another visual type, and it's an icon infographic. You'll see what that looks like once it's done. I know this one is actually correct. Discuss, we're actually linking to an actual post in their forums that we found on Google. And we're talking about background jobs. And everything looks good to me. So the next thing in the process is we are actually going to, we're not generating our content yet. We need to actually get our SEO questions. So how it's going to get the SEO questions is it's actually going to pull questions from people also ask. Then it's also going to recommend a bunch of new questions that weren't in the SERP results. And we're using a combination of Google search and Perplexity to do this. All right, so we generated 10 questions. I kind of wished it would generate a little bit more. Typically it generates anywhere from 20 to 30. But I think the reason it only generated 10 is I didn't get many questions when I initially did the SERP results for ERP Next implementation. All right, so this is the content writer. It looks intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple. I'm going to go a little bit of how this works. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to run this. And this is the first node that does anything that's important. It's actually going to take all of our content, give us an index, and separate all the information out from the titles and the content. Now it's giving us 10 total sections for the blog post. Well, actually, no, it's giving us 11. So by the time we're done, it's actually going to essentially, these would be 3 workers on your team. And we'd have our initial content writer. Then we'd have somebody that is, essentially going out and finding a graphic. In this case, it's actually generating a graphic using Flux AI. Or it's actually going to create that HTML icon infographic for us. And then we're going to have an editor that's going to make sure everything that it's doing is actually fully valid and everything is true within what the writer wrote. And it's going to do that for all 11 sections. Then we're going to actually finally write our introduction for the blog post, do our key takeaways, write our conclusion, write all of our FAQs, and then give us a final output. I'm going to pause this and I'll start it back up when this workflow actually finishes so you can see what the final result looks like. All right, so I just resumed the workflow. It's already gone through writing each section. Now we're writing our introduction, our key takeaways, our conclusion, generating our FAQ outline, and then we're also going to merge everything. All right, so everything is fully valid now. So let's go to Content Storm and see what we get for our output. All right, so this is our article. Now I still need to finish the workflow for updating everything into WordPress blogs. We already did it for WooCommerce and stuff like that. So let's go in and do this manually. We're going to go to our website and we'll just kind of do a before and after of what this looks like now. I'm not actually in the generating this image. I'm going to add that into the actual workflow when we're updating or uploading the blog post into WordPress. So we're not going to upload that, but we're going to change this content right here. And what we put in here should be a lot more engaging, and it should have new content types. Like we're going to have visual representations using images and also some icon infographics. So we're going to save. All right, so now we should have a highly optimized, engaging blog post. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to have our introduction. I think this is actually pretty well written. Take a leap into the world of ERP Next for small businesses. Might feel like a colossal step, but spoiler alert, it's totally not. We have our keywords, or our key takeaways, flexible customizations, community-driven development, strategic implementation. And this is what it's going to look like. We have our external URL to Frappy Framework. This is our icon infographic. So it actually tells us, hey, this is the phased approach We're going to do some ERP testing. We're going to do some transition strategies. We're going to do a risk assessment, and then we're actually going to do our implementation and make sure it's not too disruptive for your business. So the only thing that I probably will change is explore more about choosing the right ERP Next partner. Obviously, we are an ERP Next partner, and I would replace this with an internal URL. So I think this looks 10 times better than what it did before. Now, the cool thing about all of these questions, these are done in schema markup. So I'll show you that in a second. But this is a lesson that we generated, how Pegas Technology Solutions can help you with your ERP Next implementation. And then we have our actual conclusion. This is probably, probably around 2,500 words. We'll check it maybe in a little bit. So let's go and find Google schema markup. We probably want the schema checker. Yeah. All right, we want to make sure we go to Google because I don't actually think the schema markup on schema.org will actually, do live testing. I could be wrong on that, but I tested this a couple days ago and it did not actually find the schema on that site, but it did on this one. And I don't know many tools that are generating content like this. All right, so fully, we have our FAQ page, our question, and our answer. So now we have a chance of actually showing these up in the SERP results. That way we take up a little bit more screen real estate with Google. And I think that's going to be good. Now let's actually go and check to see how many words this content is. So let's just go to Grammarly. Oh. 2,500 words. We probably actually have around 2,600, 2,700. Depending on how many words are in the FAQs. I think this probably beats 99% of the SEO AI writing tools on the market right now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you think there are improvements that we can make to this process. And once we actually get ready to release, you can join our waiting list. But once we're ready to launch, we'll pretty much give everybody complete access to it. And I'm not sure if we're going to give you guys access to all the workflows or if it's going to be more of a front end with Airtable for now, and then we'll host all the workflows in the back end. I'm planning on doing is a full release, but I'm not positive yet. And as time goes on, we're going to be building all of this into an actual SaaS platform, and it will be fully integrated probably with Go High Level and a few other products. All right, thanks everyone.